I'm here to tell you guys the truth, which is that We Was Kangs is actually true, 100%. I have been taught this by the state media, so we're just going to buy into it now.
Hmm.
All right, we're all on board? Good. All right.
I watch Wakanda Forever.
That was easier than I was expecting for dumbness. But anyway, we shall begin with promoting something on lotusears.com, this being the Cultural Revolution book club, because the same situation is, of course, happening in the West on a day-to-day instance. And this thing went viral recently, and that thing is this, a BBC...
Can we play a bit of it?
We shall. But just to explain, this is not just BBC for adults, this is BBC for children here.
Yep.
This is CBBC. And this is a song from Horrible Histories. And
that was good.
I used to love Horrible Histories.
I'm too old for this.
Oh, so their song parodies used to be top class. They did a Dick Turpin one that was a parody of Adam and the Ants. It's genuinely quite a tune.
Okay.
They did a Michael Jackson parody for all of the Roman emperors that were like the worst, like Caligula and Nero and all that. So they were quite fun. And now this
even
just
education, like the King and Queen song actually did.
I remember that to this day. Yeah,
exactly. And instead, they've decided. I don't know. Just on a side note,
I just love this video.
The quality of this thing is crap anyway, but the history is obviously true, and I shall prove it by let's play it. Medievals was black, and then the First World War, there was blacks. And
No. You notice he skips the medievals actually.
He mentions the trumpeter.
Yeah, Henry VIII's trumpeter. Yeah,
the one black man in all of the medieval history.
Yeah, but that's not even medieval. It's like 16th century.
That proves that they were here the whole time.
Yeah,
and then he moves on to Windrush because. For some reason he ran out of stuff, and that's literally.
Yeah, but that's the second founding of the UK.
Yes, of course. The real UK.
Yes.
It's our Mayflower.
The U and then K-A-Y.
Just before we go on, right, I just want to make it clear, right, because they bring up Cheddar Man at one point. That's not true. There's no evidence that Cheddar Man had dark skin. There's no reason he did, right? But even if he did, okay, that doesn't make him African. There are actually lots of people around the world who have dark skin who aren't from Africa. That's shocking. Yeah, I watched Survive the Jive's video on this.
His best point is just like, okay, so what is a black person? Well, in the English language, that means sub-Saharan.
Yes.
So, no.
Yeah.
Like, even definitionally, if you put all the melanin in the world into him, he's still not a sub-Saharan man.
Yes.
So that doesn't make any sense. But this was my initial response. And just, it's got to go.
But just a few others, right? The Roman Emperor, not black. Right?
Really?
Yeah. I know it's going to shock you.
Yeah, bloody obvious.
North Africans in general, not black. The one trumpeter, yes, I think he was black because he came from Spain. He was a slave. So
I want to talk about the Cheddar Man real quick. I suppose we'll go through some of the examples. So as you mentioned, the Cheddar Man, every media outlet in this country, for some reason, was ecstatically happy to claim that he was a black man, even though, as Survive the Jive has pointed out, that wouldn't really make any sense, even if his skin was dark. But the problem
is not African.
Even he doesn't look like he believes it.
Well, there's also the other problem of, does anyone really trust these human beings who did this and in the media to accurately report if this man's skin tone was X or Y? I don't trust any of the human beings involved in this process. So I
have been reliably informed that we have trans Vikings, so at this point I can believe anything.
That's why. Did you see they found an Islamic ring in Sweden a little while back, and they were like, "Wow, this shows that Islam has always been in Sweden." It's like
spoils of war by any chance.
Clearly, someone killed a Muslim. That's what happened there. And then went home. Like, what else do you think happened?
It shows that the Vikings went raiding very far south.
Yeah. Anyway, but the Cheddar Man thing. Turns out they actually found the Cheddar Man's ancestor. Do you want to guess how far away he was?
Oh, like 2 miles away.
Yeah.
Like that, yeah.
And there he is. And I just, I had this weird thing we were talking about. I think it might have been with Michael, which is just, you find it funny that if you go to the famous Black Britons of today, here's Black Pound Day, some article being like, yes, black people, yummy. Because that's really all this is. It's really weird, like fetishistic.
I've got a different piece on
this. Anyway, but they list a whole bunch of people here, and I'm just going to, we got Naomi Campbell, Jamaican parents. Right. Floella Benjamin, she's from Trinidad and Tobago. Yep. There's Idris Elba, whose parents are from Ghana and Sierra Leone. Trevor McDonald, Trinidad and Tobago again, and then...
not one of these is from the area around Cheddar Gorge. That's really weird.
Yeah, none of them have their ancestry from Cheddar Man.
Yeah, interesting.
It's funny how literally every single person you meet who can accurately be described as a black man or any other group adjacent.
They come from Africa.
They never claim to be from Cheddar. Yeah. So, whatever. Just a whole side point about how mad of a definition that is. And Survive the Jive is correct. Well, there's the medieval England part as well. You look up paintings of medieval England.
I mean, we literally, like, the Anne Boleyn one was the best one, I think. Because, like, you've got the Netflix, like, literally like they're trying to like
That was
make
Channel
her look
4 as
evil.
well, wasn't it?
Was it Channel
I think
4?
it
Was
was
it?
Channel 4, yeah.
Because we have existent paintings of her from her in her life,
Hmm.
as in we know exactly what she looked like because they painted her while she was alive. And we have those paintings.
Well, it's also if she was executed for the accusation of being a witch, it was because she had polydactylism, so she had an extra like weird little finger
Yeah,
thing.
she had 6 fingers. Yeah,
If she really was black and she was beheaded, you could bet historians would have jumped on that for systemic racism narratives a long time ago.
I think.
So why
someone at the
haven't they
time would have
capitalized on
mentioned
that?
it.
Yeah.
Why would they have painted her as being as pale as milk?
Well, clearly the paintings are far right propaganda. Because I mean, we're not going to disbelieve horrible histories now, are we? So there we are.
I mean,
I have seen Bridgerton.
I agree that there's some kind of propaganda.
There is some more propaganda, anti-black propaganda, as we can see the Bayeux Tapestry. It's quite long, so I suppose we'll give it a scroll. Tell me when you see an African gentleman, chaps, and I'll shut up, I suppose. We're going to be here a year, aren't we?
Yeah, because there isn't one.
There ain't one. It's funny that. It's funny how all the historical records are what they are. And, you mentioned.
Yeah.
The truth, though, you can find it on Channel 4, and that's it. Not in the Bayeux Tapestry, not in any of the paintings, not in any of the eyewitness accounts. No. The TV, trust me, is telling you the truth. So, there you are. But I did want to go through one more thing here, which is the Black Trumpeter.
Hmm.
I think this is the funniest thing in this whole conversation.
I love the way his name is John White.
Well, it's always the case. I bet he wore white clothes a lot as well.
I don't know. Maybe he's a good person.
No, but it's just like the Family Guy joke of how do you know
Oh, yeah.
a black guy in America's doing well? Well, he's got a white car and white clothes,
Right,
and white
okay.
suit. Anyway, but he's literally just here. And so this chap, in case you're
I
wondering,
love this. One of the earliest recorded black people in the United Kingdom. No, this was before the United Kingdom existed.
Yeah.
Anyway, carry on.
but he is here. He joins the royal court, and the only reason he's there is
Spent a decade in England.
he's a diversity hire.
Right.
The king was literally like, "Ooh, a black man,"
Yeah.
and then hired him to blow trumpet, so the king could go, "Look, I've got one of them.
Look at my Moor.
Yeah. Look how worldly I am, huh?"
Literally, the Elizabethan drama, one of the most prominent plays coming out of it was Othello. If black people were common in England, it wouldn't have been written because the impact wouldn't have landed. And they had to set it in Italy in order to make it historically accurate.
But also, if black people were common, why would the king collect them? Be a bit
That's
of a-
going in Lotus is out of context.
Well, it would be a weird thing to do, wouldn't it? It's like, he's showing off that he's got a black man, but why?
It certainly wouldn't be a
common.
novelty, would it?
It doesn't make any sense. So even his own examples make the minimum number of sense. I happened to do the data once upon a time, just looking at this of the foreign-born population, going back to the first census of, 1802 or something like that. So, I mean, yeah. But I'm not just going to sit here and tell you about how, obviously it's historically wrong.
Yeah.
I find the whole thing more funny because, of course, it turns out this guy here sent us the link
Mhm.
and cut out the correct paragraphs where the people who made horrible histories, I never realized this, are awful human beings.
Really? I can't believe it.
Yeah, they weren't here to help anyone with historical knowledge.
No way.
In their own words, I don't know if you want to read this, Carl, out loud.
Well, the camera's blocking part of it, so I'll let you.
Ah. Fine. The rest for the publisher and Dairy's bank balance is not so much horrible history. For the following 15 years or so, the last horrible history, Dairy swears, has now been written, a small army of researchers furnished with truckloads of facts, anecdotes, and stories, and the author having established his overarching narrative for the period, picked those that told its best including the hardest hitting facts. He then goes on to say, because that sounds pretty good. He's got an army of researchers.
I'd love to see a fact. Yeah.
Sounds good. He says, take the balmy British Army, he says. I basically concluded it was one of the worst things to happen to the planet.
What,
British
British
Empire.
Empire.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So I deployed the facts that illustrate that, such as
Yeah.
the fate of the Tasmanian people.
Right.
Okay. Of all the 10,000 people that were there when the British arrived, 30 years later, they were pretty much gone. They wiped out a whole people. Well, that's the worst thing to ever happen to the planet.
All those
I
bride
can't think-
burnings that didn't happen.
Could you think of a single other civilization that may have done something? I mean, I think he's probably wrong here. I know nothing about this subject, but I know not to trust him that we turned up and shot them all. Could you think of any other civilization ever that might have done something a bit worse?
In a day, yes.
Yeah, not even a year.
Yeah.
Not 30 years.
Yeah.
What was
I mean-
it about us always thinking about the Roman Empire?
Yeah. I mean, they're like this. If this if this was the worst they could charge the British Empire with, I mean, I'm just saying we didn't create any pyramids of skulls,
We
right?
saved a lot more slaves than that.
Yeah, but there were lots and lots of civilizations through history, none of them European, that created pillars of skulls.
Well, not even that. There's no baby trees in Tasmania,
That's true.
where the Tasmanian babies were thrown against the woods
Yeah.
to be killed.
Well, it was just common practice in the pre-modern era that if you had to break into a city, everyone in there was going to die.
Yeah.
It was just something
All
normal.
the women were going to be raped, all the children were going to be killed or stolen.
Enslaved. Yeah. So, like, whenever you read about a historical figure, they did that a lot. Alexander the Great did that. Timur the Lame did that. Saladin did that. Like, everyone will have done that. That was just what when you're reading Wikipedia and saying you captured this city, that's actually 2 or 3 days of rape, murder, enslavement, and looting.
Not just that, all of pre-Christian Rome, they can find where the brothels were because if you dig under the tiles, it's the bodies of the children that were just killed and discarded. So that was the culture that was going on every day, not just one imperial invasion.
Yeah, obviously. But like every empire in history is built on a mountain of corpses, is what an empire is. And that's a really low death toll.
That's what I love. None of us have ever written a history book or even tried. And this guy over here that does it for a living came to the conclusion that that was the worst thing to ever happen to the planet over here. That's his worst example.
And you should read about the sack of Baghdad.
No, but how ignorant does this human being have to be to say such a thing?
And the thing is, the sack of Baghdad by the Mongols was probably like the 30th or 40th city they'd destroyed. Like, Genghis Khan had to be persuaded not to just eradicate the Chinese race because he was like, look, no, unironically.
He set up an Oxford Union debate, did he?
Almost. He was like, right, okay, we're just going to use all of China as pasture land for our horses. And his Chinese advisors were like, or you could tax them and they'll give you free money. So he was like, oh, that is a good idea.
These human beings? Yeah, you know what they'll do?
No, they don't care. They don't care.
Yeah.
They literally don't care. Don't get me started about like Attila the Hun or any of the. I mean, it goes on forever because that is the history of the human race.
He goes on here. He says, "I don't want to write history." He says,
"Thank you for giving me production over horrible histories."
I'm not a historian, and I wouldn't want to be. I want to change the world, attack the elite.
Oh yeah, the elite.
Overturn the hierarchy.
Same, but not in the cringe way that you want.
I just love it. Well, your work's certainly not doing that. Look at my stories and you'll notice that the villains are always those in power and the heroes are always the little people. I hate the establishment, always have, always will. And he just goes on to whine a bit there.
But he literally, which Roman emperor was it he claimed was black?
Well, this isn't exactly...
The little person
so,
who's the emperor of Rome, who just happens to be black?
So that's the guy who wrote the books, and this over here, this cancer is by the film production. I presume he didn't write this particular part, but this is the culmination of his work, which, as he put himself, was not based on history. It was based on my feelings, which is I don't know anything, so the British Empire was the worst thing to happen to the planet. And presumably, these human beings are exactly the same.
Why is it a cow's rear? Oh, Septimius Severus. Yeah, no, he wasn't black.
Are you sure?
Very.
But this man is very smug and arrogant. So he might know more than you.
That's my strategy.
It's
seriously not true. Again, if you have to be saying, oh, black people have been in Britain since the very beginning of Britain, then it makes me obviously think, well, why do you need to say that? What is being done here?
Could you imagine the song? Just like, Anglos have always been here. We've been here from the start.
Exactly. And the Indians would be like, no, we haven't. And Rudyard Kipling's like, well, I'm just as Indian as anyone. It's like, what are you talking about? This is obviously not the case. And it's weird and cringe that you are trying to promote that. But the thing is, there's a genuinely sinister aspect to this, because what it's to say is, well, actually, you're not really from anywhere. And actually, Africans are at least as legitimate in Britain as the British.
It's gaslighting you into accepting the precepts of universal man, but it's also speaks of a deep insecurity on the part of the people that are putting it forward.
Yeah, exactly. Well. And I had a conversation with Harun Bastani about this on Twitter, and he was just like, "Oh, this is funny, isn't it?" I'm like, don't you think it's weird that they're lying to children about the racial history of Britain? Don't you think that's weird, Aaron?
But Suleiman was a black man. The Japanese were founded by Ethiopians, Carl. What do you...
Exactly, but is it not weird that they are literally lying to children? The BBC is lying to children about who inhabits Britain and has inhabited Britain. And of course, the whole point is to retcon, so nobody in the future thinks it's strange that actually mass immigration has completely changed the demographic makeup of the country. That's what this is in favor of.
That's what I was saying to my granddad. It's like, in 30 years' time, people will think Bridgerton is history.
Yeah. They will not even know that they should be questioning this. And that's the point of this. That's why they're morally permitted to lie to children about the history of this country.
I had this exact thought yesterday just to end this off. I was playing Rome Total War. I'm playing as the House of Julii, exterminating the ghouls as you do. And I just thought through my head, because this came back into my head. Imagine if the Romans had mass media and started making videos for Gallic children about how, the Romans have always been here from the start. Yeah. We've always been in Elysia. Elysia is actually a Roman word, I tell you.
Look, Vercingetorix had a Roman slave, so we've always been here.
Basically a Roman.
But it's insane.
But it's so creepy and weird, and as you correctly point out, that creepy and disgusting aspect is completely permitted in modern quote-unquote Britain, because what Britain will become is exactly as you guys foresee, which is that it will become the case that all the children are raised on this crap, and the hope and expectation and demand of the state is that will become what people talk about when they speak of history of England. They will talk to each other about how this is totally true. And you'll have normie conversations when you're sitting around drinking tea with normies about how, there was a black guy on Hadrian's Wall. He was the emperor, I was told. And you'll just kind of look at them funny and think, how did you end up this ignorant? And this is the project to do that. If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Contemplation series, this episode on the economics of organized crime. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.